Hello everybody, I'm here with Ed Godshalk, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the history and the build of his belly tank, 1951 belly tank.
Yep, thanks Aaron. For the viewers that don't know it, these were made out of the drop tanks, they call them. They're auxiliary fuel tanks that a lot of bombers had and fighter aircraft in World War II. This came off of a P-38 Lightning. It's the desirable tank. It's the 315-gallon one. They're 3 feet in diameter. A fellow named Bill Burke was in the Philippines during the war, hot rodder, and he saw these laying out on the dock. And he said, God, a fella could stick an engine in there and a person. So they came back and started building these. He built the first one, and that's what the SoCal Speedster was built on. He built that one also. And these cars, what did they do historically? Well, they're one of the earliest mid-engine race cars. Actually, there's the auto unions before the war, but there's really not much else. When you drive it, it's a very different feel. But for their type of engine, they became the world's fastest cars, because obviously the British were making cars that did almost 400 miles an hour at this point, so you can't say they were the fastest cars in the world. But for their type of engine, yeah, they shattered all the records. And they really introduced streamlining into Bonneville. This particular car was built by Everett Adams and Tom Fornaciari. They're out of the Stockton, Livermore area of California. And Everett was only 18 years old. I had the pleasure of meeting him before he passed away. He remembered the car very well. It was his first big project he ever did. He was very generous and gave me photographs of the car, 3 photos, and here he is making drawings for me, because a lot of the car was missing when I got it. But he made a punch list for me too. He remembered the Evans intake manifolds and Evans heads. So I did the search. People like Don Orozco, some people may know him out of Monterey. He was very helpful. Came up with the original gauge set and the heads for the car. And there's another fellow, Greg Buller. He managed to help me find the Halabrand 101 quick change. Those are quite hard to find. The Culver City one, which is correct date for the car. So Marty Strode did all the chassis work for me. I kind of gathered up the rare parts. Marty put it together. We worked for 9 months together, but we made sure every part on the car, except for bolts and things like that, but all the important parts are 1951 or earlier, because we really wanted to recreate the car as it was. And this car originally was built, here's a bare metal picture of it.
Now
here.
These are the pictures from the original builder?
Yeah, this is from Everett Adams. He gave me these when I visited him back in 2016.
I see, 1952.
Yeah, so here it is, and they're building it here, 51 to 52. You can see the B-25 bomber seat. There's the DC-3 steering wheel, the Halabrand, the side shift transmission. So you can see the roll bar in the correct place and everything. So we managed to duplicate everything that was missing.
Yeah.
And then they built the car. They ran it originally at the drag strip, Kingdon drag strip in Lodi. And the problem is that they didn't have shocks on it at the time. You can see there's no shock absorbers here. It left the track, because the first thing Everett asked me when I contacted him, he says, is the bottom all dented up? I said, yeah. He said, oh yeah, that's when we left the track.
Oh.
So they bounced off of a dirt mound. So you can see the next iteration of the car, they'd added the shock absorbers to stabilize it. And he also said that thing was really hot, so you can see they added the little cooling holes here that's still on the car. But the remarkable part, this picture's taken late 52, early 53. This is the original paint. That's how I was able to identify the car and track down all the owners. It popped up on I put it on Custorama, that website. I think it's in the Netherlands. And a fella from California, like a year later, wrote in and said, I used to own that car. And from there, I was able to meet all the original owners. Rich Guasco, famous hot rodder, he had owned the car. I met Rich in person. And then he told me that he had bought it from the cousin of Tom Fornaciari, and the cousin was still alive, Bob, and he gave me a lot of history on the car. Both Bob and Everett remembered the same speed, 143 to 145 at El Mirage. They thought it was 53, it could have been 54, but it's one of those 2 years. It ran number 9C, it would have been 9th in class, and in the C class, that's the engine displacement that year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it runs, Mercury, Ford Flathead, 1946, 48. As I said, we were able to get all the Evans equipment back on it. If you like, I can fire it up for you, Aaron.
Absolutely,
All right.
That would be great.
We'll do the yoga move, getting in and see how I do.
Yeah, it's a little tight.
Yeah, the first time I did it, I thought I would need a stool. I did it, but actually it turns out you just swing over here. Then this is the yoga move. Lift into here. There we are. of shimming down in the thing, but not too bad. There we are.
You're facing the wrong way.
All right, make sure it's out of gear, right? There was that, maybe you saw Monterey this year, the guy left the Porsche 917 in gear and dragged him down the green. That didn't go too well.
Nice.
All right, now the extraction process. Just push yourself back, slide up. My friend Chris, Collector Part Exchange, put in an advertisement for it. He drove it too. We took it out to the Elbert Desert. The first time we've been driven in 70 years, and we were working on it the night before, putting it together. But yeah, surprisingly, the thing ran great, very docile, actually easy to drive. Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
Oh yeah.
What speeds do you think? What speeds do you think you got to?
At most 80. You know, that thing was totally untested, but it felt very easy.
It's pretty windy that day too, right?
Yeah. But it was very pleasant driving it. That's all I can tell you. It was very docile. You know, Marty Strode, great chassis engineer. He did all the chassis work on it. And it's funny, it has a 1934 Ford truck steering box in it, so it takes like 3 turns of the wheel just to turn over, because it's Marty, luckily he knew what he was doing. You don't want a fast turning car, especially if they were doing 140 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny rediscovering how do you even hold the tank together. Originally we had in Marty's shop, we'd use nuts and bolts, and it would take like 20 minutes to button up the car, and you always wondered, say there's an incident, you got to get out. You can't have guys sitting there with ratchets trying to go.
Right.
And I was at the feed store in Burns, and I saw these clevis pins, and it turns out there's 4 1/4-inch holes already in the car, and we realized this is what they must have done. You can put the whole top on in a few minutes. In an emergency, you can pull just the 4 pins and get it open.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, here's the interior here.
Marty's coming in.
Good. So I managed to get the correct bomber seat, DC3 steering wheel, the pre-war Stuart Warner gauges. This is a temporary temperature gauge here. The original one's being rebuilt right now, but it'll look the same, but it'll be oriented correctly. Ah, the builder, Marty Strode.
This is Marty Strode, pretty well-known builder and fabricator for these hot rods.
This is first blood.
This for 2 counties anyway.
Right. I think a little more than that. Well, go ahead, tell us what you did to help out with the belly tanker, Marty.
Well, he brought me these 2 tank shells and says, build me a car. And then we had to sit down and figure out what we needed for parts, and it's been an ongoing thing, trying to find all the right stuff as we went along. And he's a stickler for keeping it correct, And this tank was difficult because the frame rails are down, buried down in the tank here, where normally they're up at about the split of the body. You lose all that room that you have underneath the engine and all that stuff, places to put stuff. But all in all, little by little, we worked out the parts. We kept looking at pictures, seeing what they used for steering gears, and we tried 3 or 4 different steering gears, and we wound up with this 34.
Which is the
Ford
same as
pickup.
in the picture.
What's that?
It's the same in the picture.
And it's the same thing they used in the Ted Fry tank too.
Right, so
But we found that out later.
you took the pictures from when the original builders built it and then replicated.
Yeah, just what you can find on the internet. Ted found a bunch of them.
Did you find a bunch of pictures on the internet of this specific? No.
The only 3 were from Everett Adams. He was the builder.
So it looks like it has 40 Ford wheels in the front. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't measure the width, but usually they're 40s.
Yeah, and a little bit larger wheels in the back. What are those from? Do you know?
Those are the Divco milk truck wheels that a lot of the Bonneville and El Mirage people like because it gave them larger diameter. They're very hard to get. Bobby Green was kind enough to sell a pair of those.
Yeah.
And those are Indy tires, correct?
Yeah.
And who built the motor for you, or did you build it?
I did that.
Did you?
Bearing service in Portland. Yeah, Marty did the brilliant job on the chassis and everything, and I did the engine. And
Is that what you do? You're an engine builder, or?
I'm an electrical engineer by trade, but
Yeah.
I built a number of engines. I had the fortune to take a engine building course when I was younger with Pat Usher. He owns Sunset Engine Development Company, and enjoy building engines.
Well, tell me about the internals. What do you?
It's a 4-inch stroke crank, but as well as Eagle cranks, you can get them pretty reasonable. And the forged rods, Arius pistons, forged pistons, Schneider cams, the 350 lift cam. I have a list of the parts I can give you to take with you if you wish.
How many cubic inch?
It's right around 269, 270. We didn't do much of an overbore.
It's about 80 over or so.
Yeah,
Somewhere?
a mild overboard because it was a good block, and they're getting thin on the ground, these blocks.
Yep.
Mike Moore, I don't know if he's here, he was nice enough to set up the carburetors for us. They were all a mess when I got them. Supposedly rebuilt, they weren't, but luckily Mike saved us on that.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great
It's
job. Looks really
Herman
good.
Collins Magneto, rebuilt by Cirillo. His modifications. Works quite well.
Tell me about the quick change.
Oh yeah, the Hallebrand quick change rear end. That's probably the most rare part on the car. Greg Buller, out of Eugene, he deals in things like this. He's only had 2 in his life. His and this one. It's the reason it's rare. It's Culver City, so I can't remember the exact year. I think it's pre-53 when they moved to Torrance. So if you put a Torrance one on here, it's later than the car. So it took forever to find that one. So Marty and I worked really hard to keep everything date coded correctly on this car.
But the fact is that this has this has the V8 with quick change gears versus 1 inch. These are like 1 1/4 or 1 3/8. And that's what makes this one different. It's longer in the back and it's set up different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Culver City Model A quick changes, but not like this one. And it's got the safety hubs. and all
Yeah,
that
Marty
stuff.
did a great job wrestling those gears into place. Yeah, it has a really Bendix electric fuel pump, which would have been available at that time. We knew from Everett they did have a battery in the car because he drag
And
raced
that's
it.
period correct?
Yeah, because you can find them in early Alfa Romeos from the early 50s. But I'm
So
not-
you're the guy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Everett said that they did have a battery and a starter because they could run it at the drag strips. So we felt okay recreating that.
Looks like you got the fuel tank right behind there. Or no, that's the radiator. Sorry.
Yeah, Marty did a great job with the water tank. It's like building a spaceship. There's not more than a millimeter
That's-
or 2 of room in each
That's a
direction.
lot of stuff to put inside of a belly tank. And
Whenever you drop something, it's always an epic getting it out from under the engine.
yeah, and your leg room and your controls. So tell me about your controls here.
Well, basically you just got 1 linkage rod and runs back to a rocker arm right here. Runs back to an arm on the transmission. We're only using second and high gear is all.
Okay.
You don't need reverse, and you don't really need a low gear in these cars. And then that's the brakes, the master cylinder's back here. And kind of everything exposed, And then this is a 37 Ford front mechanical brake cable off of a 37 Ford. It pulls the clutch from here, makes a change, it hooks up to a rod back here. That way we can go around the corner with it. That's about it.
Yeah, you have to admire when you say, Marty, the engineering that went into these, having done one now.
Oh, yeah.
You look at the old pictures, they weren't that simple to build. It took these guys almost 2 years to build this thing.
Yeah.
Marty was able to crank it out in 9 months. The last
Well, it
couple
helps
weeks,
when you know what you're doing, right, Marty?
Or you know people that know what they're doing.
the last couple weeks were crazy. I look back at the pictures. The engine's not even in the car like a week before we're going to the salt flats. And
You're brush painting it.
yeah, that's true. Then, yeah, we tried to recreate the paint. It's I used old tractor paint with a brush because it was painted. A lot of people like to do the retro rod thing and leave it bare metal, but it was painted. You can see it clearly in the photos that it was a
Yeah.
gloss black. But so it took a while to special order the farm paint, the tractor paint, but it went on great. So no extraordinary measures were taken, as far as a Concord type presentation.
Right. All right, gentlemen. Thanks
All
for
right,
the
thanks, Aaron.
information on your tanker there.
All right, I can give you a list if you want, on the parts that are in it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.